Everyone, JJ here, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of What is in this mason jar? I've been getting the odd question and comment, and there are a handful of people who are wondering what is exactly in that I'm drinking in a lot of these videos, and I've decided to keep it a secret, like the whatever's inside the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, but I can assure you it doesn't taste good, but it's probably the only thing keeping me healthy at this point. So on to the actual point of this video. Today I wanted to talk about some drum heads. And if you've watched any of my covers, you'll kind of notice, I swap between heads and do a bundle of videos. And so in the last few years, I made another video about this, where I've kind of been converted over to Aquarian drum heads. And I'm a huge fan of them, and I love the sound that Aquarian has, and everything about them has been great so far. But for many years before I did make the switch to Aquarian, I played Remo heads almost exclusively for probably I would say at least 20 years. And I've tried kind of every head Remo had available in some iteration. I don't always play a kit this size, so sometimes it was easier, if I was using a 4-piece, just to, try some ambassador heads, try some coated emperors, clear emperors, pinstripes, whatever I kind of felt like swapping over to, just to see, what worked best with certain drums. And I got very, very familiar with Remo's lineup, and particularly these are Tama Grandstar drums, and these are the drums I kind of spend the most time with these days. So I've had the most kind of experience with tuning and setup and things like that with this drum set, pretty much in my studio at home here. This drum set doesn't leave too often anymore, so I've been experimenting around with a lot of different head choices and things lately, and for quite a few years I had, you can see this coated head here. This is an Aquarian head, and this is the a 2-ply coated head similar to a Remo Emperor. And for quite a while I actually had the whole outfit, the whole kit outfitted with 2-ply coated heads. And recently I just, times come up where you feel like introducing a bit of change, and just experimenting, seeing how things sound and whatnot. So I've always been a big fan of how the Remo black dot heads sound on these drums. And prior to switching to Aquarian, the black dot Remos were the primary heads I was using on these drums. And most people would think, I tended to play a lot of heavy metal and things like that, and a 2-ply head was kind of the de facto standard of hard rock and heavy metal and things like that. But I've always liked how the response of single-ply heads feels. On my bass drums, I've pretty much always used a single-ply head with a reinforcement patch, and I always just felt like I got a better response. And it seems counterintuitive in a way, but in my experience, I feel like I can get a lower, kind of a deeper note from the drum using a single-ply head than I do with a double-ply head. And my kind of takeaway from that is, if you think of anything that's thicker, like a thick cymbal tends to have a higher pitch, and a thicker drum shell tends to have a higher pitch as well. So for me, it kind of holds true that something about that reasoning kind of made me drift towards the idea that a 2-ply, a thicker head, kind of just has a fundamental, the fundamental note might be naturally in a higher range, and some of that trade-off is for the durability that comes with using a 2-ply head. And so through the years, I tried single-ply heads, and unfortunately, technique or whatever it is, I just couldn't utilize them I would just eat through them too quickly and they would get pitted, and I always loved the sound. And so the happy medium for me has always been the Remo Black Dots. And Aquarian does make I think it's exactly the same specs for the head. And they've kind of had supply issues in the last while. So that the Aquarian calls them the power dot heads. So they've been unavailable for the last little while. So I thought I wanted to go back, experiment with these heads again. So I thought, why not try out the Remos again? I had the full set, minus this one. This is an odd duck, 15-inch size, and those are hard to come by. But all the rest of the heads, as far as the toms go, I had all the sizes available for to reuse my Remo Black Dots. So I thought, why not put them on, revisit the sound and see, and what was going on under the microphones and things like that now. And once again, I've kind of come to the conclusion that with this particular drum set, I'm able to get a lower note at the same relative feel for the head. Under the stick, the heads, I like kind of a looser feel. I feel if I tune them up too high or the head is too tight, that it just I get like a wild kind of uncontrolled rebound from the head. And so I like to be able to kind of sink in a little bit, if you know what I mean, to the toms, and just, really kind of get into them and dig into the head. And that technique is part of my sound, and, tuning the heads to a certain range kind of gets me into the wheelhouse that I'm trying to get to. And I gotta say, it's like, at the end of the day, I've been come back to this conclusion a handful of times, but I think single ply heads are kind of the best sounding on these kits. There's some drummers like Todd Zuckerman and a handful of other guys that kind of swear by single ply heads as having the truest kind of tone and the best tuning accuracy and things like that. And I think those guys are kind of onto something, and they all swear by kind of using single ply heads top and bottom. And this isn't quite the single ply head, but I am getting, in my opinion, the benefits of a single ply head. The tuning range, and just kind of like a deeper resonance. It's just the drums sound kind of fuller, and it's not readily apparent sometimes under some of the drum covers that I've done and some of the recordings and things like that. But just sitting in the room, like I feel like the drums are kind of more presence. There's more high end and low end. They're just fuller on each end of the spectrum as far as the range of the drums goes. And these are, if you know anything about these Grand Star drums, these are very, very thick birch shells. And sometimes it's like, because of the thickness of them, I feel like you have to kind of give these drums a bit more oomph, let's call it, to kind of get things going. And there's something about the combination of, the thicker drum and the thinner drum head that just kind of like, it just appeals to me. So for right now, I've still got my kind of, worn out slightly. They still sound all right, but they're getting a little long in the tooth now. And I'm eagerly anticipating the arrival of the Aquarian equivalent of these heads, which I'm excited to get on the kit and to kind of get going. But I just thought I'd come on and just kind of talk about a swap that I've made lately with some of the gear, and it's Remo has always made a great product, and part of the reason for me switching over to Aquarian was really, with such a large drum set, to go through doing heads on this drum kit again can get very expensive. And Aquarian, through my retailer where I live, is just much more reasonable when it comes to pricing and things like that. And so when it does come time to put new heads on a large kit like this, it actually ends up being pretty close to half the price, which is quite a bit. So in doing that, I was never one to put new heads on all the time, and I don't really wear heads out that quickly either, and so they hold their tone for quite a while. But there does get to be a point where a year or more into having drum heads on a kit, they do start to lose a bit of their tone, and a nice fresh set of heads kind of makes all the difference. But yeah, if you haven't experimented much with, as I said earlier, the idea always seems to be that 2-ply heads yield the lowest kind of fundamental note on the drum. And I think that is true, but I think the reason why is more about a tuning kind of thing, where you can take a 2-ply head and you can tune it lower because you're not so worried about the heads becoming dented and things like that. Whereas if you take a head like this, in my experience, at the same relative tension, I always think I've always felt like I could get a lower kind of fundamental pitch out of a 1-ply head, and the response as well. Like I've always been a big fan of the 1-ply dot heads on the snare, and now basically I'm running those on my toms as well, and so it's kind of a familiar feel, and durability hasn't been a question, as long as I'm not the most accurate hitter in the world, but that black dot is a pretty good target to aim for, and that's I don't use small drums really either, so on an 8-inch drum or a 6-inch drum, the dot is like the size of a quarter, but on these larger drums, it's more like a CD, so it's a pretty easy target to hit. But yeah, if you haven't given any thought to trying some different heads or 1-ply heads, and you like to play hard rock or heavy metal, such as myself, give it a try. I've always been a big fan of Tama drums, and I like to look back through the catalogs and to see what head choices were coming from the factory, and the engineers at those companies. I will always go on the side of them knowing more about things than I do, and which is a safe bet. But when you look back through the old Tama catalogs, you can see that basically the head choices pretty much always came down, especially when you get into the 80s and this era of drums. It's either pinstripe heads or it's the black dot heads, and you could say there wasn't a lot of choice back then, and maybe that could be the reason why, but I think there was a bit more to it than that. I don't think they just chose arbitrary heads to put on. I think there's probably a lot of R&D and testing that went into a choice such as that, and Tama was trying to push innovation and be the best they could back then, so arbitrarily picking a head just because it was available doesn't seem like something they would probably do at that time. So the fact that they were utilizing black dots on their superstar drums, I have my original black dot heads that were on my Imperial Star drums from the 70s. Like Octobans have always had black dot heads, and yeah, it's I don't think, as I said, I don't think they would be making these choices without some reasoning behind it, and trying to put what would make the drums sound the best on it. And so yeah, I don't think they were wrong. It was a good choice, Tama, and any other brand that was doing that back then. So, but yeah, just thought I'd come on and just kind of do a bit of a breakdown. If anyone's noticed, I swapped out the heads kind of recently. That was the reason why, to put something fresh on there, and kind of just get myself interested in kind of tuning. And I'm a very lazy tuner, and I don't really like to tune that often on such a big drum set. So doing a head swap is a big deal for me. So I'm glad that it was worth my time. And yeah, I'll do another video once the Aquarian heads arrive and I'm able to get a bit of playtime with those, and do a comparison between the two. So check that video out when it comes. And yeah, this has been the one about the Remo black dot heads. Thanks for watching. Cheers.